My great great grandparents lived in India at a time when the country was called the Golden Eagle. They were craftsmen, and India was known for its excellent craftsmanship. Villages were self sufficient, and the communities directly consumed these outputs. Sadly, after the East India Company, the country was left to a colony fulfilling Britain's interests. My grandparents were farmers, and at that time, the agricultural sector accounted for the largest share of the workforce, which was around 70 to 75%. The manufacturing and services sectors accounted for the rest. My parents also followed the footsteps of my grandparents. They wanted me to work in an MNC and ensured that I got the requisite knowledge. Half my ancestral farms were given away so that I could do engineering. Post engineering, unfortunately, I am unemployed.
As we saw, unemployment has been a dynamic and perennial problem for India. We, the students of Indian School of Business, class of 2020, present our recommendations on tackling this problem. To understand the problem, we first delve into the types of unemployment. Very broadly, there is voluntary unemployment, wherein one chooses to be not a part of the workforce. It is predominant in countries which have a stable social security system. It is not much prevalent in India. Involuntary unemployment arises when someone looking for work is unable to find it. There are several major subcategories, such as seasonal unemployment, which arises due to the variability of demand of labor in an industry with seasons. Major examples are agriculture, on which still 60% of the Indian labor force depends, and tourism. Casual unemployment arises in contractual employments. At the end of the contract, someone finds themselves to be unemployed. Examples are masons and plumbers. Educated unemployment is a growing concern in India. It is the percentage of youth who do not find jobs commensurate with their educational degrees. And finally, disguised unemployment is when we employ more than the number of optimal people to do a job. All four are particularly problematic for India. Unemployment no longer is restricted to just the rural belt or particular segments. As we can see, the urban unemployment has steadily been rising and has consistently been 2 percentage points above the rural unemployment in the past years. If we look at the unemployment rate of the youth, that is the population within 20 to 24, who constitute 40% of the total population and form the basis of India's demographic dividend, the unemployment rate is a staggering 32%. And within the youth, the more educated you are, the more likely are you to be unemployed. Whereas the unemployment rate for those with no education hovered around 2 to 3% in the last 2-3 years, those who had a graduation or a post-graduation degree suffered from an unemployment rate of 8 to 10%. Next, we view the causes of unemployment.
Now the question is, what are the main causes of unemployment? During our research, we observed various reasons for unemployment. Broadly, we can attribute unemployment to the following reasons. The first is high dependence on agriculture. As we all know, agriculture comprises more than 50% of the total workforce. The nature of the agrarian service is such that a lot of the employment is dependent on uncontrollable factors such as monsoons, the output from crops in the previous year, etc. We have come across data that suggests that unemployment in the agriculture sector can reach up to 50% of the total employed in the sector during off seasons where no crops are being farmed. Another main cause of unemployment is our large population. With a current population of 1.3 billion, which is projected to hit 1.5 billion in the next 20 years, it can be safely assumed that we will need to create at least 200 million new jobs to provide employment opportunities to the increasing labor force. To provide gainful employment to such a big number is really a difficult task, hence requires a multifaceted approach by the government. Another cause for unemployment is the limited support for self-employed. and small to medium businesses from the government. A lot of businesses do shut down in the first 6 months since they do not have the required capital to go forward. In the absence of self-employment opportunities, the workforce goes in search of paid jobs, putting additional pressure on the existing employment opportunities. And finally, the low standards of a large number of educational institutions is also a contributing factor to unemployment. From the data that we have collected, we have come across very disturbing statistics that suggest that the rate of unemployment increases as the level of education increases. This is mainly due to the low quality of educational institutions that churns out millions of graduates with skills every year that are far below industry standards. In Kerala, we see that the unemployment rate has increased from 6% in 2012 to 11%, which is above the national average, even though Kerala has the highest literacy rate in the country. However, apart from the low standard of educational institutions, another factor was highlighted by a recent UNDP report. It was found that the Indian economy is experiencing high growth in the last 2 decades, yet less than half the number of Indians seeking jobs have managed to get one during this period. Experts fear that at present India is experiencing jobless growth with not enough jobs being created for its working age population. This is evidenced by the diverging GDP growth and employment growth chart. Now we'll go through some of the recommendations for reducing unemployment.
Now that we have looked at the causes and types of unemployment, let us look at some of our recommendations. Our first recommendation is on reducing seasonal unemployment. Seasonal unemployment is driven by the seasonal nature of Indian agriculture. Most of the agricultural land in India is under single cropping. This drives the seasonality of labor demand in agriculture. We recommend that the government bring at least 55% of the agricultural land under multi-cropping by 2022, leveraging existing programs and block-level agricultural officers. Real estate has been a major sink for the seasonally unemployed and remains the most viable source of employment for the low to unskilled labor force in the country. Since the past 5 years, the residential real estate market has experienced a considerable slowdown. We recommend a continuation of the government's efforts to boost the market via support for affordable housing, interest rate rebates, the RERA Act, etc. Our recommendations to boost self-employment are to continue the Mudra scheme and maintain current disbursement rates and hit rupees 8.5 lakh crore by 2022. Proliferation of new businesses is driven by the ease of doing business. We recommend that India breaks into the top 30 of the Ease of Doing Business Index by 2022 by further strengthening the IBC, lowering barriers to exit, and simplifying the incorporation process. On the startup front, concerns remain, especially on tax compliance issues. We recommend that the government adopt a more flexible stance with an exemption of measures such as the angel tax. Deficiencies in the Indian education system are among the primary drivers of unemployment in India. We recommend an overall increase in government spending on education to 6% of GDP from the current 4.6% and stress on vocational and skill-based education with the incremental spend. We recommend the setting up of an independent apex body that would review the syllabi of universities and restructure and realign them with industry needs every 3 years. Let us now look at some metrics by which we can measure these recommendations. We have set the following targets for unemployment rates by 2022. Anything beyond 5.5% would be rather alarming. A moderate target would be 5%, which is India's long-run average. A good target would be 4%, which is the APAC average.
Hey guys. Hi guys. This is group F11 and the whole video was conceptualized by
Aryyabrata,
Bhargav,
Vishnu,
Ashish, Shivam.
We hope you guys had a good learning experience and we are just hoping that we don't add on to the numbers at the end of the year. Thank you.